Risk Profile. We're on with our guest, Jason Boyce, with Avenue 7 Media. He is a longtime Amazon product seller, 10 figures, really successful, learned lots of lessons going through the ups and downs as Amazon figured out and grew in and of itself, and is using his experience to teach entrepreneurs what it takes to make it in the world of consumer products. And I think he's going to be a great guest for us at Risk Profile. Jason, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, Mark, thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Well, awesome. Well, I think, I personally have been really enjoying seeing your book, The Amazon Jungle, come out. And you've done quite the media roadshow, walking around to different, telling different flavors. And you've kind of got what is it like to work with a company like Amazon? It's not, not like your typical company from a lot of the stories you've told. You've got the angle where you are you really have a lot of expertise in actually what it takes to be successful on Amazon. And so you have the angle training entrepreneurs there. And I think a unique position to really kind of comment on maybe the political dynamics that's going on right now with Amazon and other big tech companies. So kind of starting from the beginning, you want to kind of walk through a little story with the viewers, kind of how you got to where you are?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in this Amazon game for a long time. I didn't start on Amazon.com, believe it or not. I started with a direct-to-consumer website. I was just leaving the Marine Corps. My brother had this great idea to start a basketball hoops company called superduperhoops.com. And he had befriended some guys over at overture.com. Overture was a small company, had a little office in Pasadena, California. I'm from LA. And they had invented something called pay-per-click advertising. And were finding ways for product sellers and brands to get on the first page of search results on all the different search engines that were out there. So, I'm dating myself, but Google wasn't the only search engine once upon a time.
It's hard to remember a time like that.
Right? Yeah, right. I mean, we're talking Alta Vista, and there's 25 other names that have an Alta or a Vista in it that were all the search engines, right?
There's like a web crawler that was a long time ago.
Yeah, totally. CompuSearch. I mean, I'm really dating myself here. And so, because we knew these guys and we would go visit them at their little office in Pasadena, they figured out, they taught us how to get on, the first page of search results, and we were paying a nickel a click, if you can imagine that, back in the good old days. And so we were everywhere online, which was a tiny, tiny market at the time. We're talking 2002, but Amazon saw us and called us. Someone at Amazon called and said, "Hey, we want you to sell your hoops on Amazon." And I said, "What are you talking about? You guys sell books. I think I just bought a VHS tape off of your website, right?" And of course he laughed and he said, "No, we're launching up, and we're gonna try the marketplace game. We're gonna try to be like eBay, if you can imagine that, right?" eBay was the 8,000-pound gorilla at the time, and we said, "Sure. People don't know Super Duper. They know Amazon. This is going to be a good brand positioning for us." And that's how I got started. So 2003, and then I did a 17-year journey as a top 200 seller on Amazon. I didn't start that way, but we iterated our way to getting to that top selling status. Originally I was a drop shipper, and boy, I miss those days. So just-in-time inventory model, list the product, sell it, send it to the manufacturer.
So easy.
Well, it sounds a lot easier than it actually was. We even built out entire software infrastructure to manage it with, hundreds of different vendors shipping from all over to all over. But the beautiful part is you didn't have that inventory risk.
Yeah.
You didn't have to worry if Amazon took your listing down, being stuck with inventory, collecting dust on your shelves. But we started off as a drop shipper. I'll give you a good example. Spalding, we were a top online retailer for Spalding for years. So much so that they used to invite us to the All-Star weekend, NBA All-Star weekend, and put us up in the Ritz. And, wow. we'd get in the elevator with Shaq and, Michael Jordan and everything, and go to the game. And so we did a lot of visits with them. And then one day we woke up and all of our Spalding items, sorry, my work from home, my dog is barking in the background there. That's Gigi, by the way. She says hi. We woke up one day and all these great sales that we were getting on Amazon through our Spalding just dried up. And we're like, what the heck is going on? And that's when we were first introduced to this concept called the buy box, where anyone could attach to the listing, come in, for all the work that you created with the listing, come in at a lower price and steal your sales. It wasn't just anybody, it was Amazon. Amazon had gone in and bought all of the products that we were selling on their platform, and they kind of undercut us by 30% of what we could even imagine spending.
Wow. Yeah.
And we're like, okay, time for Act 2. And so we went from doing that, we went back to Spalding and we said, look, you guys like us, we like you, work with us here. Based on what our customers are telling us, we want you to sell us a unique product, but we want you to change some things, right? And give us our own UPC code so we don't have to share the buy box with Amazon or anybody else for that matter. And we know these are going to be top sellers. So that was like our exclusives phase, which I think is still a very effective strategy if you can get those exclusive contracts in place with a vendor, with a solid brand. Did fabulously well with that, grew, triple digits, even better than the dropship business. And we kind of became believers of being the only seller in the buy box. And then one day we woke up and we saw, whoa, look at that. Interesting. Amazon also is attaching to our exclusives. I thought this was exclusive. We called Spalding and we're like, WTF. And, our sales rep is like crying on the phone saying, I am so sorry. I meant to call you. Our CEO got a call. Amazon said, if we don't sell to them, they're going to stop buying everything. And they panicked and now they're selling to them. And I'm like, well, F you very much. And then my brothers and I say, okay, time for Act 3, right? Yeah. Act 3. And we're like, this is nonsense. We know exactly what the Amazon shopper and what our .com customers want. We're going to make our own brand. And we built our brand and it was fabulous. I mean, by the time I left the company, by the time I had my exit, we were growing like 160% year over year. And that's really the premise of the book, Mark. Amazon are assholes, right? Yeah. They're not going to lift a finger to help you grow your business. They're a platform. It's a DIY platform. You got to be there because they're enormous. There's Amazon and then everybody else combines for like 5th place. There is no 2nd or 3rd. Yeah. And if you're going to be there, have your own brand. Yeah. Be different, right? Be better. Yeah. And those are some of the steps that we lay out in the Amazon jungle.
So the Amazon jungle, I think it's a perfect title for something like this because, jungles aren't safe. They're pretty dangerous. You're in and exposed, you're amongst amazing diversity. But there's also a few jaguars and some other dangerous pests that have to get you. Yeah. So, you're not saying don't go into the jungle. It's say, if you're going to go into the jungle, you need to understand how this works and you need to set yourself up for success. On Risk Profile, we're really focused on the entrepreneurial journey in and of itself. And I love the tapestry you're weaving from college to, I think we're going to start a business and going through each iteration of this business as it goes. How have you found it different going from directly contributing and growing a brand on an e-commerce site to actually teaching other entrepreneurs and really kind of paving the path ahead of those entrepreneurs that are coming behind you? How has that grown you as a person? Has that been what you thought it would be? Has it been, different? How has that been for you?
Oh, great question, Mark. It's been really, frankly, magnificent. I because of my success as a seller, I used to get invited to do talks or be on panels at some of the big trade shows like the Prosper Show, which is a great show to go to for education for Amazon sellers. And I think it was maybe 2015 or 2016, still running, my company, my seller business and my .com. And, I was able to offer value on a panel and how these trade shows go, right? At the end of your presentation, people will come up and ask you questions. Yeah. And people would say, Jason, I'm having this problem. And I'm like, oh yeah, I had that problem 3 years ago. Try this. Or, Jason, I'm having that problem. And I'm like, oh yeah, we got to solve for this 6 months ago. Do that. Yeah. And that exchange changed everything for me. I realized that I really liked helping others with this, let's call it an Amazon problem, with the Amazon problem. Then I liked, running my own brand. I like to tell people I've gone from the digging gold business to the picks and shovel business. And I'm so much happier for me personally, because I love these small businesses. I love entrepreneurs. I love these sellers. And, I'll just say Amazon wouldn't be what it is today without the hard work, the grit, the product knowledge, the capital, And then just the amazing energy that this large seller community, now reaching 6 million sellers globally, bring to Amazon.com.
Now,
and so
can you kind of help us with some numbers? I mean, I've heard lots of like high percentages and seen lots of charts in terms of Amazon's growth for the third party sellers. Like, can you help us frame like how big is this? How big of a deal is the third party network to Amazon?
The third party network, in my opinion, now if you talk to Amazon press department, they'll deny it, but I don't buy it. This is the cash cow. Forget about AWS. No, not forget about AWS. It's an amazing business in its own right, right? It's definitely driving revenue. Nowhere near the profit dollars that the third-party marketplace is driving for Amazon, and they're not publicly talking about it. I think they're not publicly talking about it because they don't have to, because the SEC is not requiring it, and they're not asking the right questions, right? So this third-party marketplace business for Amazon is big business. So let's talk about that for a second. When Amazon reports to the SEC, they report not the dollar value of goods sold on their .com, but the take rate from these third-party sellers. So if I sell $100
kind of like
item,
the profit or the revenue, I guess, from that.
Think of it as a sales commission. Every time I, as a third-party seller, sells a $100 item on Amazon, Amazon reports they have a take rate of on average 15% of that sale. They're only reporting 15%. The $100 sale goes to the seller.
Yeah.
If you mark that up, it's called gross merchandise value. If you take that take rate that's kind of hidden in the 10K and the quarterly financials that Amazon has, and you mark that up, depending on the analyst, depending on who you talk to, Amazon ran between 490 billion and on the low end, on the high end, 610 billion in revenue through their .com business last year.
What's an average multiple on a business where you're thinking in terms of gross revenue like that?
I mean, what are they, 30, 40 times EBITDA right now? They're enormous multiple because they just grew 38% last year.
Wow.
And by the way, Mark, just the other interesting thing, Walmart may have already been surpassed in GMV, right? I think they probably have. If they haven't, they will be this year. That's my prediction. So they're the largest US based retailer in the world at this point, or they will be this year. They're massive. And nobody really knows that side of the story. Now, let's talk about SKU count, and then I'll come back to your original question about the sellers. Amazon, there's two ways to do Amazon. You can sell to Amazon, to an Amazon buyer, which is the traditional retail relationship. I make a product, I sell it for a wholesale price, I sell it to a buyer, that retailer marks it up and sells it, right? That's 1P, we call it, right? If for all your listeners, avoid that like the plague for a lot of reasons. We can come back to
no
that.
Control, all kinds of things. Yeah.
No control is just the understatement. It can be a real quagmire. Forget about jungle. It just like jungle warfare is what it becomes. And so there are 15 million SKUs listed and purchased by the Amazon 1P buying team. 15 million.
Jeez.
A Walmart superstore has about maybe 150, 200,000 SKUs, which is a really big store. 15 million. Now, layer on in the United States now, 1.3, 1.4 million sellers with an active listing. There's 6 million globally. Many of those don't have an active listing, but the real players are about 1 million. Those sellers bring 500 million SKUs to the Amazon.com platform, which is why, Mark, anytime you need anything, even if you've never seen the product before, you could pull up your Prime app, do a search and find the product. The third-party seller community is what makes Amazon really what it is. Combine that with their best-in-class technologies, their platform, their customer base, their Prime and supply chain network, and it's really sort of an unbeatable e-commerce platform.
So that's really unique, and I think maybe leading in towards your mentorship and training of other entrepreneurs. So out externally, I would have thought, well, Amazon is you're never going to really compete with it. But what you're saying is that this ecosystem of entrepreneurship within Amazon is actually much larger than the company in and of itself. Am I hearing that correctly?
No, you're absolutely right. The GMV driven by the third-party seller was about 300 billion of that. If we take the $490 billion GMV estimate from my good friend Joe Kazakinas at the Marketplace Pulse, his numbers are really tight. Let's say 490 billion, 300 billion of that came from a third-party seller. 190 billion came from Amazon retail. So 3 to 2, really less than 3 to 2.
So I guess from that sense, from Amazon's perspective, if they kind of take the best of breed products that are from the third party marketplace and copy them, they're squeezing out a small extra margin on top of what they're making on the traditional take rate. Is that kind of what's driving their strategy? Do they run out of ideas and they have to use their cash for something? Like what do you think between those two is it?
It could be the latter. Look, I scratch my head all the time. I just started as a special guest host on another podcast from our friends at GeekWire, Day 2.
Yeah.
In our very first episode that just launched last week, we interviewed Peter Daring, who did this amazing YouTube video, basically making fun of Amazon for copying his best-in-class Peak Design camera bag. They literally copied.
Yeah.
You saw it, right? Yeah. So Peter Daring, amazing entrepreneur. You asked me about
great memes associated with the camera bag, by the way.
Oh, so amazing. They put these goofy googly eye. If you haven't seen it, look at, camera bag, Peter Daring, Peak Design on YouTube. It's worth the watch. And we talked about this for an hour. Why Amazon makes way more money off of the third party seller, right? And it's growing faster than 1P retail. So why would they come in here and attempt to take the knees off for somebody, an amazing entrepreneur like Peter Daring, after he's created this one-of-a-kind product? Why would they try to do that and knock it off? Mark, I don't get it. They come in and say, well, look, retailers have been creating their own private labels forever, so we're just doing that. Okay, fine, but you really have to copy?
Yeah.
It's not an apples to apples comparison because Peter's product on the quality side is much higher, but it's very hard to determine on a search results page versus in a store where you can touch and feel the difference between a low price item and a regular priced item. So I don't know why they're doing it. I think that they are hungry for growth. Right. When you have convinced investors for 25, 30 years that don't worry about the profits, although they're highly profitable now, but it's about the stock price value. And we get that stock price value by having enormous growth. I think that Amazon is so hungry for additional growth that they are looking everywhere for it. Even if that means making some questionable decisions against its seller community, which I speak out against often.
So I think it's so glad that you're being so specific and researched and actually talking about this concept. Now, does that mean that there really isn't any hope for the third party sellers? What do you say to somebody who says to you, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting a product business"? What do they need to have in order to be successful in the jungle?
Well, it's a great question. And at first glance, you might think that. However, let's remember, potentially $500 to $600 billion in revenue through the .com. 65% of people who search for a product to buy online start on Amazon.com. The 35% that start on Google, you go to the Google search results page, it almost feels like Amazon.
It's like
because
Amazon,
the links are everywhere.
Amazon.
Yeah. And if it's not Amazon, it's an Amazon affiliate, right? You got one more click to get to Amazon. And so the market is huge and growing. So the tide is rising rapidly, which is to say, this is a really big market, unlike anything we've ever seen here in the United States, and growing at a rate unlike anything we've seen a company this size grow. So the market is expanding in every vertical on Amazon. There are no stagnant growth categories. And if you think about, just thinking in terms of Amazon, what's Main Street? Like in the old days of brick and mortar, you wanted that corner lot on Main Street that was highly trafficked, or, like an anchor in a mall where all the foot traffic come through. So what is that on Amazon? That's the first page of search results. Yeah. And for just about every subcategory, highest volume keywords, on that first page of search results, there's 70 listings. You can advertise on maybe a dozen or more of those listings so you can get placement. And if you know what you're doing with the right strategy, and you can get on that first page, there's literally hundreds of millions of dollars of business on every search page that's going on.
Sure.
Right. I mean, 10s, 20. I mean, I just looked at a category, a specific subcategory in the automotive space, diagnostic space. Yeah. And the market was $230 million a year in this little niche category. And so, specific to your question, can someone who comes in and creates a unique product, different is better than better, one of my favorite sayings, right? Can you come in here, add value? Can you wow the Amazon shoppers? Can your main image, product title, and your product listing can pop off of that search results page so that you're better than the rest. If you can do that,
right.
And you don't even have to be the lowest price, Mark. If you can do that, you can even be the higher priced. Then there's plenty of room on that main street, on that first page of search results, where you can definitely have success right alongside, the Amazon Basics knockoff and, the 3 or 4 China sellers that are coming in at the low price point.
Right.
And then, the last thing I'll say on this issue, there's 150 million Prime subscribers. I tell my clients for Avenue 7 Media who have their own private label brand. I help brands grow on Amazon. I say there's 50 million on the bottom end of the third of that 150 million Prime subscribers that we're never going to get as a customer. And that's okay. Let Amazon Basics, let China have that customer. What we want is the 50 million on the high end income brackets of those 150 million Prime subscribers, like my wife, who will never buy the lowest price item on Amazon, right?
Sure.
And we want to wow those customers. We want to show them a premium product with a premium listing, price high and justify. When you can do that strategy, Mark, there's plenty of room for massive growth on Amazon.
So I think, to me, that again, just kind of echoing the story of entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship in any case is not without risks, and understanding those risks and really planning for them and preparing yourself for the dangers that are out there is a key part of success. And I love that quote. Different is better than
better.
Different is better than better. And I think that's super encouraging. So let's kind of zoom out one more time to kind of some of the regulatory action. Do you think whatever Congress and the Biden administration is doing to limit the growth of big tech and maybe some of these more heavy-handed tactics is additional upside for the entrepreneurial third-party community on Amazon? Do you think it's going to change or shift the market in a strange way?
Gosh, that's the $1 trillion question right there, right? It's a great question, Mark. And so I have a lot to say on this topic. We should maybe do another hour-long podcast just for this one topic. First of all, let me just say, Amazon won. And, they won by, in most cases, playing by the rules. And they innovated and they did better than everyone else. And they left their competition behind in a big way. I mean, they've lapped them, dozens of times. And so in that regard, I think Amazon deserves credit. I think Jeff Bezos is a huge American success story. What he's done with his management team over at Amazon is historic. It's a once in a generation company. So I just want to put that out there first. But now, because of their massive success, they are so big that I don't believe the next Amazon can be born today. And that's a problem. That's a problem for capitalism. That's a problem for our country. And that's a problem for our society. And so now I believe strongly that it's up to the legislators to take action, because frankly, up until recently, they've kind of been asleep at the wheel.
Yeah.
They need to recognize, they need to identify, they need to modernize the antitrust rules for the 21st century. They need to modernize the SEC reporting requirements for companies like marketplaces that frankly, there was no marketplace, 40 years ago in the 80s when, a lot of this most recent antitrust law was fine-tuned. There was no such thing as a marketplace. There were malls, right? And so, so I think, Lisa Khan is brilliant. Certainly the Biden administration's new hires are people who understand this, who get that there needs to be a refresh and they need to revisit the laws of what makes antitrust. This isn't just about consumers, right? Amazon's all about low prices. This isn't about, is Amazon at some point going to raise prices? And they could do that tomorrow and people would still be hooked in because they're so market dominant. But it's really about what kind of environment can legislators and what kind of actions can they take in order to make it possible for the next Amazon to be born? And then, just for a little bit of historical context here, Mark, Microsoft in the 90s, all the way back in the Stone Age when I was going to college, was sued by the government, federal government for antitrust. The federal government claimed that they were doing something called tying. They were giving away one segment of their business for nothing and tying it to another business they collected money on, which created an anti-competitive space. Internet Explorer was one of the browsers they were bundling in and giving it away. And it was hurting innovation in the space. 10 years later, they lost. The government lost. Not Amazon, sorry, Microsoft. Microsoft didn't lose the case. However, the government got enough concessions from Microsoft that allowed Google to be born, arguably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Google wouldn't exist in the way that it did. Now Google is in a, I think 100 times more powerful than ever Microsoft was. So now we've got another monopoly in its place. But I think that should be the goal. Step one, modernize. I would love to see some singles rather than some home runs in this antitrust space. Outlaw some nefarious practices like something called buy box suppression, where Amazon will come in and essentially delist you if they see you selling your product $5 less on Walmart.com, right?
Yeah.
That's no good.
Yeah.
And, sellers and consumers shouldn't have to give up their right to collectively sue Amazon or take them to court in order to get them to reduce some of these nefarious practices.
Yeah. Gotcha.
That's what happens right now. You basically waive your rights when you become a seller. And there's a lot of, big protections that Amazon gets that frankly, they don't need it.
Yeah.
They got more lawyers than the government. And so, right. I mean, I think the courts are ultimately a better place to sort some of these issues out.
Right.
But the laws have to be changed in order to make it possible. Forced arbitration is nuisance. I think it should be outlawed everywhere, right? You shouldn't have to, in order to do business with a big company, you shouldn't have to give up your rights to due process.
Yeah.
In exchange for doing business with them.
Totally agree. Just kind of wrapping this back around to the entrepreneurs that you're working with. What have you seen out of their passion and their energy and maybe their ideas that you most like to highlight? Is there something that you kind of use as a litmus test when somebody comes to you with a concept and an idea? And if so, how does that formulate into advice that you could give any entrepreneur that's listening to this, is thinking about taking the risk and taking that leap into entrepreneurship?
It's another great question, Mark. So, we're a young agency. We just hit our second birthday.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. I appreciate that. And it's been such an amazing journey. This is literally what gets me up in the morning. I love tapping into the energy and the knowledge and of these the entrepreneurs that we work with who've developed these amazing products and amazing brands. And so, I talk a lot about this in the book. How do you come up with that product, right? If you haven't created a product before, how do you do it? And, all of my clients have a different story, but sometimes that story is, I had a high school job where I got to know this product line and I knew it really well. Another story might be, hey, I know I got a cousin who's got a friend who has a factory that makes this product. And so I had to connect, right? Yeah. I was able to get really low cost product. One of my favorites is I'm a user of a product in this space. And every time I buy one from somebody else, it leaves me wanting. I know I can do better, right?
Yeah.
And so I love that story. And I've probably heard it, hundreds of times over my entire career. And even into my childhood, like we all have. That's a great one. I think the best advice is, I'm going to narrow it to Amazon. There was a time, and I know I was guilty of this, where we would just go to China and get an also-ran product and get it at the lowest price and sell it at a low price. But that game is over. If you think as an entrepreneur, you're going to be able to do an also-ran product, sort of the same product as everybody else on the search results page, and outprice the Chinese factories that are flooding the market,
right?
Or Amazon basics, the unit economics don't work. Yeah. You can't do that anymore. And so this is why I love Peter Daring, right? Who we talked about, Peak Design.
Yeah.
Incredibly creative, really connected with the end user consumer, right? Listens to them, takes their feedback, not personally, but takes it and says thank you and adapts that for the next product design that he comes up with. That's it. That's the opportunity, both from a .com perspective and a DTC, direct to consumer brand, and Amazon perspective. That's the opportunity. Tap into the creative side, find out, do your research, find out what's missing in the products that are there now, make it better, make it cooler, and then shout it from the rooftops.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be perfect when you launch this product. And that's okay. That's fine, right? Put it out in the wild. Let real consumers who've used their real money to buy your product tell you what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
Listen to them, thank them, and iterate. Every time you go back to reorder that product, iterate it, and then update your messaging to match the new and improved version of your product based on amazing feedback from your customer. That's it. That's the holy grail right there, Mark. If you can do that consistently, stay self-disciplined in order to execute on that model, you can make a best-in-class product that Amazon Basics can't compete with.
Well, Jason, I really appreciate your time. For our listeners at Risk Profile, I think your advice speaks to me as a software entrepreneur, and in so many ways, focusing on your customers and your product and your fit is so key. And like you said, different is better than best. And I think, for everybody that wants to learn more about Jason, you can buy the book, The Amazon Jungle, anywhere you buy books. Jason, are you comfortable sharing a way for listeners to get in touch with you in case they have follow-on questions on how to be better?
Hey, Mark, I'm so connected and love entrepreneurs so much. I'm going to give you my email address. Your followers can reach out to me at Jason, JASON @avenue7media.com. They can also visit my website, avenue7media.com, to find out what we do as an agency. We're kind of we're your outsourced department for Amazon for growth and profitability. Look forward to hearing from your group. I know you got an awesome audience base.
Well, Jason, thanks so much. Risk Profile, I really appreciate your time with us here. Please like and subscribe to our podcast. It really helps us increase our rankings and start spreading the world that entrepreneurship is a key part of this economy. And even for companies like Amazon, built really with the help of thousands and thousands and thousands of minds and ideas and passions of individual entrepreneurs in the third-party marketplace. All right, guys, go out there and be someone.